The national government is looking into reports of alleged Chinese reclamation happening in the West Philippine Sea.
In the past, ang tanong kasi is how much does the Beijing government have a say on the day-to-day behavior of their Coast Guard vessels? We know that a lot of them are sometimes rogue, no, in terms of their behavior. So one big question is how much of what's happening on the ground, including aggressive actions by their Coast Guard and their militia, is a reflective of the policy of the Chinese government.
From the nation's capital, all sides, all the time. I'm Robbie Alampay.
And I'm Gretchen Hall. The big story tonight.
The Philippine government said it is verifying reports that detail how China is supposedly ramping up construction of artificial islands in unoccupied features of the Spratly Islands.
The Chinese embassy has denied the report, calling it fake news. Camille Samonte with the big story.
China may have resumed land reclamation in the Spratlys, Bloomberg reported, quoting unnamed Western officials. Bloomberg reported on Tuesday China has resumed land reclamation on some uninhabited features in the Spratly in the disputed South China Sea. The officials claimed that Beijing-controlled fishing fleets operating as de facto maritime militias have carried out construction activities at 4 unoccupied half-submerged features in the Spratlys. New land formations reportedly appeared above water over the past year at the Eldad Reef in the Tizard Bank. Physical changes were also reported at both Whitson Reef and Sandy Cay, where features previously submerged now sit permanently above the high tide line. Sandy Cay is near Eldad Reef. These are all within the 200 nautical mile exclusive economic zone of the Philippines. There were also developments on Lang Kiam Cay, also known as Panata Island. It does not say if the Chinese were building new structures on Lang Kiam because the feature is one of 9 features occupied by the Philippines. Although China has expanded and put up structure like airfield and secured ports in areas it had long controlled, the Bloomberg report said the latest construction activities were seen on unoccupied features, a clear violation of the 2002 Declaration of Conduct of Parties in the South China Sea, China in Phnom Penh. According to Bloomberg, Western officials also warned that China's latest activity shows their attempt to, quote, advance a new status quo. In a statement, the Foreign Affairs Department said it's seriously concerned over reports of China's new construction and reclamation activities in the disputed South China Sea. The DFA said it violates international law and existing agreement with claimants. The agency also said it has asked relevant agencies to verify and validate the contents of the report, which came out a few weeks before President Bongbong Marcos undertakes a state visit to China in early January. For their part, the Chinese embassy has denied Bloomberg's report, saying that it was, quote, fake news indeed. For News 5, Camille Samonte, We Are One News.
Here to discuss these latest developments in the West Philippine Sea, One News Defense Editor Manny Mogato. Good evening, Manny.
Good evening, Robbie. Good evening, Gretchen.
So, pagsabayin ko na ay two questions raised by the report and also the lead up to it. One is there any question at all that this is objectively happening? Because China is calling it fake news. And then the other thing, on the assumption na obviously nangyayari to, we heard a soundbite from Richard Haydarian saying that one question here is whether or not this is state policy or this is a state direction or if these are by any chance rogue elements. So yun yung ano ko. Is there any question about what's happening out there? And then two, is there such a thing as a rogue activity as far as Beijing is concerned?
Number one, there is no rogue activity. This is all directed by the People's Liberation Army. It's actually one hand saying another and another hand doing another thing. No? The Chinese Foreign Ministry might be somewhat conciliatory, diplomatic, but their military is advancing their own national security interests. And for China, this is a very important area. No? They are trying to create a buffer zone. No? So they are trying to push away the Americans, Australians, and the other countries by creating a first island chain in the South China Sea, no? So that they are depriving the other powers, no? It's called the anti-access and area denial strategy of China. Because if you have garrisons in the South China Sea, it's impossible for the Americans or
Okay, so-
Japanese to just come in.
So we know that this is happening. When we say ramping up activities, are they building new structures or are they just expanding on existing ones?
I'm not sure about the accuracy of Bloomberg report because China has not violated the DOC, the Declaration of Parties in the South China Sea, Conduct of Parties in the South China Sea. This was signed in Phnom Penh in 2002. And what they did was just expand the islands that they already occupy. So they're not violating the agreement. But obviously, if the reports of Bloomberg are true and accurate, this is a violation because it is on an uninhabited and occupied island.
That's the changing of the status quo that they were referring to.
Yes, and another problem is that one of the islands they reported is actually occupied by the Philippines, Panata and Kota. No, so I'm not sure if Bloomberg was saying that Philippines was also expanding its area. Perhaps it's true, no, because since the time of President Duterte, there have been many improvements on Philippine occupied features. Like in Pag-asa, they're building a runway, they build a beach ramp, and in other areas, they build some kind of a navigational tools, lighthouses. So there could be some kind of development that Bloomberg has reported, but it's not as expansive as what China did by creating an island.
Now, speaking of construction, I mean, zooming into one of the encounters the other day, construction materials of the Philippine Army were not allowed to go in to Ayungin Shoal, to the BRP Sierra Madre, and we know how significant that is, being the closest to Mischief Reef. Tell us all about that. What is with construction materials and what are they trying to do?
I don't know if I'm at liberty to tell you this, but the Philippines has been reinforcing that ship long time ago, even during the time of President Aquino. So I'm not surprised if the ship will collapse. There will be a structure inside.
Okay. Because we know that the state of the ship itself. I mean, the hull,
it's rusting.
Everybody knows. But what you're saying is actually there is a sturdy structure inside.
Inside,
the
yeah.
Okay.
So what they are doing is they're delivering cement, steel, little by little, so that they could improve what's ever inside the ship.
Okay. Now let's go beyond the current arena defined by whatever the skirmishes and latest developments are, and zoom out to the Philippine-China relations in general. Is this all basically building up to President Marcos' visit to China next year?
Yes, President Bongbong will be in Beijing by the first week of January. So this is all part of shadow dancing of the two sides. Because I heard Richard Hedarian saying, I think yesterday, that maybe the Chinese were trying to send a message because Bongbong Marcos is trying to get closer to the Americans compared to the former president. But I think whether that is true or not, China's position will not change. They will assert their own claims and they will protect their own interests. In fact, they have started to build on the second island chain that is beyond the Philippines. It's already in the Pacific near Guam. and Chinese vessels, Chinese survey ships have been moving to the Pacific Ocean, and their aircraft carriers been patrolling that area. So they're moving outside the first island chain because I think they believe that they already have control. Although U.S., Japan, China, Australia are challenging China's 9-dash line. And recently, Canada has unveiled its Indo-Pacific strategy by sending 3 guided missile frigates in the region starting next year. So, ang dami nang interesado sa South China Sea. And so that China will protect its own interest by building more and sending more ships to protect their own area.
Well, it seems it is up to us to build our defenses also as well in response to that. And there are definitely more players now in the West Philippine Sea. Thank you so much for joining us, One News Defense Editor, Manny Mogato.
Thank you.
After the break, some motorcycle taxi riders have started operating as informal habal-habal riders amid the holiday rush. We'll discuss that with the National Chairman of Motorcycle Riders Group, Arrancada Riders Alliance, Rod Cruz. That when the big story returns. Keep it here on One News. You're watching The Big Story here on One News. Due to the holiday rush, some motorcycle taxi riders have started operating as informal habal-habal riders. They also cited lower earnings in ride-hailing apps. Mobile journalist King Senko gives us a front seat to that story.
Motorcycle taxis have always been the transportation mode of choice for those who hate getting stuck in traffic. However, over the past weeks, booking a motorcycle through ride-hailing apps has become more difficult especially as the holiday draws near. In my own experience, it took almost an hour before I was able to get a rider, even past the rush hours. This means it could be even more challenging to book a ride during rush hours. Motorcycle taxis are the first choice of commuters like Kirin, who has to go to the office every day. Aside from the cheap fare, it also saves her a lot of time. But now,
actually, sobrang hirap po mag-book ng angkas. Lalo po kanina pong umaga kasi nag-try ako mag-book ng angkas saka joyride. And Grab din, lahat trinay ko pero wala pong nag-accept.
whenever this happens, Kirin keeps on waiting until she manages to get a rider. When this fails, Kirin is forced to take the train. But why exactly is it more difficult to book a motorcycle taxi these days?
Ang demand po natin ng mga public utility vehicles ngayon, tumataas na po talaga. Hindi po kaagad tayo makapag-open ng mga ruta kasi nga, or TNBC slots kasi nga po, we need to study po yung supply and demand.
Even though demand is rising, we spotted a lot of riders parked near malls and major establishments. I even tried booking a ride near these establishments, but none of the riders nearby accepted it. Their explanation?
So member din po kayo ng application ng Angkas?
Oo, pero hindi ko ginagamit eh.
Bakit po?
May kababaan kasi ang fare ng ng Angkas. Kasi wala akong kahati, tsaka hindi 20% ang percentage ng top up.
Riders say the 20% top-up is a huge cut from their earnings. On top of this, they also have to pay for insurance. With this, some commuters have agreed to come up with arrangements with riders.
May mga subay ako na inahatid sundo ko talaga. Minsan nagpapa-escort sa akin pag pupunta ng Divisoria. Pero sagot naman nila yung parking tsaka yung bayad yung oras ko.
The LTFRB have earlier warned the public that such transactions with motorcycle riders and even private vehicles are unsafe and prohibited.
Apprehend na po kami doon sa mga social media postings po na yon. So patuloy din po yung aming anti-colorium operation po doon. Marami na pong kotse, no? Sedan po na na-impound na po ng ating opisina.
Mobile journalist King Senko, we are One News.
Here to share his take on the current situation of motorcycle taxi riders amid the holiday season, we have with us live via Zoom Arrancada Riders Alliance National Chairman Rod Cruz. Good evening. Welcome to the big story, Mr. Cruz.
Good evening po. Good evening sa lahat po, Sir Robbie and Ma'am Gretchen. Good evening po.
Sir, umpisa po natin sa ano po ang punot dulo nitong phenomenon na ito. It seems that yung slots din for TNVS with LTFRB is at the root of this problem. Is that a fair starting point for trying to understand what's happening here?
Okay. Let me give you the whole side of the story. Kung titingnan kasi natin, tatlo ang nagbigyan ng prangkisa ng sinasabi natin, temporary franchise ng LTFRB, DOTR, saka ano. So we're talking about yung Angkas, of course, then yung Joyride, and then yung Move It. And so far, kung titignan naman natin itong lahat ng ito, there is a certain percentage o yung dami sa bawat nabigyan ng parang temporary franchise. Ngayon, we have to consider this. Holiday season na ngayon. Marami na talagang gumagamit ng mga hailing app. Now, to consider na dumadami rin yung habal-habal, ito yung sinasabi nga natin dito is yung the risk they have to take. Dahil nga, pag ikaw, ordinaryong ride, yung namamasada ka o sumasakay ka sa motorcycle hailing app, we have to take into consideration yung tinatawag natin na is it safe? Doon kaya nagkakaroon problema sa mga habal-habal. I have nothing against the habal-habal riders. Sinasabi nga nila, yung parang nakakatulong na nga raw sa mga tao dahil nga raw sa tinatawag natin from point A to point B, but still, it doesn't have a tinatawag natin insurance. Now, when it comes to insurance, sabi na binabawas na sa mga riders, parang minimal amount lang yata yung sinasabi natin dito. I haven't have any info yet with regards to this. But yung sinasabi nga natin, pag ikaw ordinaryong pasahero ka, tapos sasakay ka ng yung sa movie to sa anuman sa angkas, you are assured that what you're riding is insured. Whatever happens to you or whatever happens to the passenger, you're insured.
Apa. And
Yes,
we will
Yes,
get to the safety aspect here, no? The safety and the security aspect, particularly when riding with. But dun lang po muna, we still want to understand yung situation on the supply and the demand. Because LTFRB kanina, at least in the soundbite, sabi, kaya nga pinag-aaralan natin. Ano pang pag-aaralan? Clearly, and I think all of us have friends, if not personal experience, of people waiting for hours just to get confirmation of, isn't it an objective truth that there is something wrong with the supply? Sir? Mr. Cruz? Parang naputol yata yung connection natin kay Mr. Cruz. But nandiyan pa yata siya. I think naputol lang po ang audio ni Mr. Cruz.
There you go.
Yeah, pasensya na po. Nakamute po yata kayo momentarily. So, yun lang po. Objectively speaking, is there anything to even determine as to whether or not kulang ang supply ng mga authorized? Let's not even talk about yet yung mga habal-habal, but just yung authorized between the three ride-hailing companies.
As far as I'm concerned, sir, there are at least 6,000, correct me if I'm wrong, there are 6,000 riders sa tatlong hailing app na yun. That's 18,000 na po, kung tutusin. Operating here in Metro Manila alone.
Okay. Sige. But what should be that? What should that number be?
You mean yung gano'ng karami na dapat?
Ilan po dapat? I mean, given the demand naman, especially taon-taon naman, ina-anticipate naman natin yung pagtaas ng demand. I guess ang tanong is 18,000 enough?
This season, I guess, kulang pa. Kaso nga, ang sinasabi natin dito, ang binigyan lang ng authority ng LTFRB, DOTR, yung tinatawag natin, yung committee doon, is binigyan lang ng 6,000 ang tatlong nabigyan ng temporary franchise. So parang kung titignan natin, talagang kulang kung sabihin pa natin. Kaso, there is no such specific law. Pag pinag-uusapan nga natin, wala pang motorcycle yung taxi law na sinatawag natin. Kaya medyo nag-uusap pa yung mga sa Congress pa yan, pinag-uusapan pa yan. Kasi nga, kung titignan natin, talagang kulang pa talaga.
Pero
Kulang pa
nirereklamo po
talaga.
18,000 nirereklamo po ng ating riders, the 20% top-up is too much. Lahat po nagtaasa na, pamasahe, gasolina. What do you think about that? Is it too much? I mean, taking a look at the cost, the fares, are we being fair with the riders, or is it causing them to find other means, find other rackets to make up for the expenses?
As far as I'm concerned, talking to the angkas, yung mga taga-angkas, wala naman problema sa 20% na top-up kung tutusin. Pinakamababa na nga yan. Mababa na talaga yan. So, siguro, kasi nga, sinasabi nga natin, baka konti kinikita ng tao o ano man, is they resorted na malaki nga yung 20%. Pero hindi naman siguro dahil, kaya nga itong in-demand na motorcycle hailing app, motorcycle rider, yung mga pagkatawag natin, tatawag ng mga ganyan, is pinakamababa na nga compared to taxi and other TNVS na tatawag natin.
Okay, maraming salamat po. Arangkada Riders Alliance National Chairman Rod Cruz. And after this short break, President Bongbong Marcos has vetoed 3 provisions in the 2023 national budget. We will look into that and more when the big story returns. Keep it here on One News. You're still watching The Big Story here on One News. President Bongbong Marcos has vetoed 3 provisions in the 2023 national budget. The vetoed items include the establishment of a revolving fund for the Education Department's DepEd TV. The president also rejected a provision that would have barred the Tourism Department from using its budget to change the country's tourism slogan. Lastly, President Marcos rejected the provision that would have allowed the National Labor Relations Commission to use its income for operations. The palace says existing laws do not allow this. The president signed his first budget bill into law last week, keeping intact controversial provisions, including the confidential and intelligence funds for the Office of the Vice President and the Department of Education.
Celebrities in this year's Metro Manila Film Festival went around Quezon City for the annual Parade of Stars. MJ Marfori tells us more.
From the fluvial parade last year, the Metro Manila Film Festival's annual Parade of Stars is back on the streets. Pinoy showbiz fans flock to Quezon Avenue to catch a glimpse of their favorite stars.
Halata naman kung sino inaabangan mo. Hindi halata. Hindi halata.
Yes.
Bakit niya naisipan umulan, umaraw, pumunta dito?
Kasi kailangan natin ng full support sa nanay ko. Sina din Lustre, yes, of course.
And kami po from Iloilo pa pumunta dito para po mag-attend ng parade at saka premiere night.
Yes.
Yes, we're from Iloilo.
Perfect.
Lahat po ng mga artistang Pilipino bilang suporta. Dahil tayo mga Pilipino, dapat sinusuportahan natin ang pelikulang Pilipino.
All 8 film centuries showed up in spectacular floats. Family Matters showcased their homey ride that appears to double as a house. My Father, Myself is hoping to achieve a blockbuster week early on with its cinema-inspired float. Partners in crime couple Vice Ganda and Ivana Alawi also pumped up the crowd in their colorful float. It's also a no-brainer why the cast of The Teacher came in a school bus-inspired float. Coco Martin and Jody Santa Maria led rom-com Love You with an Accent came with a bingo-themed ride. Giant LED screens with cryptic messages was the selling point for The Leader, featuring Nadine Lustre, while the cast of Mama Sapano appears battle-ready. Ang Nananahimik ang Gabi brought in the early scares with their horror house-themed float. The 48th Metro Manila Film Festival will run from December 25 to January 7. From one parade to another over in Katipunan, the University of the Philippines Diliman holds their annual Lantern Parade. Regardless if it's rain or shine, students and alumni flock to the university grounds. Some lined up early, eager to see the colorful paroles. This is the first time in years that the university was able to hold the event due to COVID-19. And now that it's back, students and faculty alike are excited to relax and have a good time with family and friends. After the parade at the Academic Hall, a Christmas concert is lined up, featuring artists like J.K. Labajo, Zach Tabudlo, Zilt, Tanya Markova, December Avenue, and a whole lot more. For News 5, MJ Marfori, we are One News.
And that's the big story tonight. For more updates, follow News 5, The Philippine Star, and Business World online. You may also log on to onenews.ph for more analysis. I'm Robbie Alampay.
The big story is also available via Signal Play app. Make a free account now at signalplay.com to stream One News anytime, anywhere. I'm Gretchen Ho. Stay safe, Philippines, and happy holidays. We are down to our last 4 days before Christmas.
We are One News, all sides, all the time.